I'm your host, Sean MacKenzie. Thank you for joining me once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we're going back to our general interest playlist, and we're going to look at comparing the two roles of data engineer and data scientist. And lots of people ask this question. They wonder sort of what's the difference between these two roles, and what should I expect if I want to have a career in either of those areas. And so without further ado, let's get to our comparison between data engineers and data scientists. Need help or coaching on your project? Make sure to check out my Patreon. The link is in the description. Okay, so this video is for anybody who was interested in, the difference between a data engineer and a data scientist. And of course, this is a very generalized explanation. Of course, every person is different, and there are people in these roles with widely varying experience and skill sets and things like that. But in general, this is how I see these two roles. And I like to score these two, just like I did in my previous video of data analyst versus data scientist. I like to score them across, more science-based to the right here, and to the left I've got more technical architecture knowledge. And this is sort of how I look at the different roles, in case you're wondering, if I want to become a data scientist or a data engineer, what am I likely going to be doing, and those kinds of things. And so I've given it my Sean MacKenzie data engineering score along the left-hand side, or pardon me, along the axis here, and from 0 to 10. And I've scored these two roles accordingly. And so you can get an idea of what a profile looks like between these two, just like we did in my previous video of data analyst versus data scientist. So now my experience is, I've got 20 years of experience, and I'm one of the people that sort of arrived here as somebody who was in, doing data solutions for decades, and I've seen that these two labels have been created. Data scientist was earlier. I think you started seeing that role title back around like 2010, 2013, somewhere in there, I think. And then it really took off about 5 years ago. And data engineering is one of those titles that kind of has been in a similar, created more recently as well. And also, I'm doing a master's degree right now, and when I looked at the programs at the university that I'm studying at, the two programs were very, very similar between data engineering and data science, and with just a few courses different. And so and of course the data engineering, the two courses that were different, they were much more strongly toward the the data and platform development side, and the data science program was much more heavily into like the prescriptive analytics and things like that. But I did notice, and the courses that I took were quite strong, that the expectation is that data engineers will also be doing a lot of work in using machine learning and doing deep learning and things like that, even though their exposure and use of in those areas might not be as strong as in data science. And so starting from the left here, just generally, data engineers are going to have a strong, architecture understanding, whereas data scientists are not really going to be that interested in that side of it. They'll have some knowledge of it, but they will be more interested in receiving the data so that they can create their models and things like that. Database administration, data engineers are pretty good at that generally. Again, data science, they're not really going to be that interested in doing that kind of stuff. Application design, data engineers, lots of data engineers that I know are very good at building applications, how to collect data properly, and how to have it structured, and having data integrity and things like that. Data scientists generally will have an understanding of that stuff. Data normalization, again, that's a big thing for data engineers, not so much for data scientists. Data pipelining is sort of like the core of the data engineers world. How to move data around, and data scientists will have a good understanding of that stuff as well, because they'll be using the output of those, whereas they might not be creating the platform per se, but they'll have a good understanding of it. And getting data via code, that's something that a data engineer is just going to be really good at. And data scientists will also be using a lot of those tools, but generally they will not use those, and they'll have somebody creating data sets for them, or they'll be using other methods. And these two actually really highlight where I think one of the biggest differences between data engineers and data scientists is that data engineers will generally not be using data in text files. That's sort of like one thing of course they know how to and they will use, but they'll much more prefer to not have data come out of a strongly typed format, or a database format even. So they'll be much more likely to build interop directly between diverse data systems, so that you don't lose a lot of the information. Whereas data scientists will generally work more with text files, and they'll be using those to input into their models. In terms of soft skills, I think data scientists are going to have an edge there. Data engineers, from all of the environments I've been in, they're pretty good, but they're not. It's not like their forte. For data cleaning, I think data engineers probably have an edge there. They're going to be able to use Python and R just like a data scientist will, but they will also be able to leverage big, relational database systems and all of the efficiency that's in there, and they'll also be able to build platforms, whereas a data scientist will just be looking at the current problem. Data cleaning, they'll be good at it in order to get the data ready for their model, but generally speaking, a data engineer is going to have an edge there. In terms of exploratory analytics, I think the data scientist they're going to be a bit stronger. Descriptive analytics, same kind of idea. I think they're both very strong, and the expectation is that both of these roles will be able to do this kind of analytics, and produce some good output there. And in general, across the exploratory, descriptive, predictive, I think they're both very strong in those areas. In statistics, definitely, I think the data scientist, that's where you start seeing a bigger edge, I would say. Data engineers will be using, statistics for a lot of the work that they do, but a data scientist is going to be sort of pushing that to the edge, because that's sort of like what their role is all about in a lot of ways. In terms of big data, I think the data engineer is going to be a little bit stronger, because because they'll be able to implement big data solutions, whereas I think data scientists in general are consumers of those, and building data products, that's going to be, data engineer is going to be a bit stronger. They're both going to be strong in that area as well. Data scientists, they're going to be able to create some custom platforms and things like that, but they won't have the toolkit like the data engineer does. In terms of data wrangling, I think they're both about the same. Data engineers will be more inclined to use, relational database products and Python and things like that, whereas I think data scientists will be using R, Python, Excel, and those types of tools. In terms of data governance, I think data engineers are going to support the data governance strategies and things like that, and data scientists are going to be guiding that. They might be more into that sort of advisory role. And in terms of code to analyze data, about the same. I think they just use different tools. they're both going to be very good at those, especially as they become more senior. In terms of prescriptive analytics, I think definitely that's where you're getting into the data science realm a bit more. You know, and the same thing for machine learning and deep learning. Those are kind of that whole area is going to be, that's more of a data scientists sort of wheelhouse. But data engineers do have a good knowledge of it. From what I've seen, definitely data engineers can build these models and run them and things like that. And from what I've seen from the coursework that I've done, the expectation is that data engineers will use that stuff. I've also used it in sort of like real world applications and things like that. And so I think that this is very, very strong for both, but of course the data scientists, this is sort of like their main area. And then domain knowledge, I should say, is more like you're going to have data scientists. I mean, data science teams generally have very wide-ranging skill sets that are held by the data scientists on the team, and some data scientists have very, very strong domain knowledge. Generally, a data engineer is not as interested. They're going to learn the domain and then apply, their ability to build the platform to support, the data that is in there, especially for these, data-driven organizations, the new term, right? Data-driven, becoming a data science-focused organization. And I think that's where the data engineers they won't know the domain knowledge as much, but they're going to be building. Whereas data scientists, they'll probably have a data scientist on the team that really knows that whatever domain it is that they're working in, they'll know it inside and out. And in terms of salaries and things, again, it's very wide ranging. In North America here, generally speaking, the salaries are going to be about the same for entry level all the way up to senior level. And generally speaking, both of these roles will make very good, in terms of, if you're getting a regular job or if you're working as a contractor, both of these roles will definitely go well into the six-figure range, and with some exceptions, we'll be making more than that, depending on sort of like the task at hand and the skill of the person in the role. In terms of personality-wise, who's suitable for these, definitely the data engineer is going to be somebody who loves the tech side of it and has boatloads of patience and things like that, and ability to work on very systematic designs, who enjoys building applications and building data products and things like that. Whereas I think if you're more interested in the science and your statistics are much stronger, you might look at moving more toward the data science role. I mean, the roles are very, very similar, and they both have strengths and weaknesses, and some people will be able to do both of them. But definitely, if you're more interested in sort of like the systematic side of it, that's your data engineering side of it. If you're interested in databases and big data and moving data around and building machine learning models and things like that, then definitely data engineering is going to be great. If you're more interested in the statistical side and you like building models and doing sort of more of the complex stuff and trying to find new information from the data that your organization has, then you're probably going to be more interested in the data science side. And make sure to check out my previous video, Data Analyst versus Data Scientist, to give you an idea of the differences between those two roles. And if you're interested in seeing two roles compared in sort of like the data sphere, I'd be happy to put together a video on that comparison, and make sure to let me know in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed today's discussion on data engineer versus data scientist. If you like what you saw today, please make sure to give the video a thumbs up Make sure to subscribe to the channel, click the bell when you see the bell, and put any questions or comments you might have in the comment section below. Have a great day, have a safe day, and I'll catch you next time.